What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be replacing spark plugs. I don't know the last time these plugs were replaced in this car, and I'm not even sure if they're the right ones, so we're going to go ahead and throw in a new set. To use the NGK Laser Platinums, these are the UP plugs. I run these plugs on basically all of my E36s. The convertible has this car is going to be running it, and the E30 is going to be running these. I do like these plugs. I've had no problems with them. If you guys want to have that discussion about which plug is best, then we can have that discussion later. But for now, we're going to basically just be getting into what it takes to pop these plugs and put in a new one. So replacing your plugs is a very critical basic maintenance part. It will keep your car running very nicely. Really, the only requirement for replacing spark plugs is to make sure that the engine is cold. You do not want to be doing this when the engine is hot. Because the aluminum heads do expand, it kind of clamps on the plug a little bit. If you try and pop them out while it's hot, you might actually do some damage to the spark plug threads in the cylinder head. So to avoid that, just make sure to replace them when the engine is cold. Tools we will be using: 3/8 driver, 10mm sockets. I have a deep well and a short well there. I use the deep well primarily, but I use the short one for cylinder number 6. It's kind of tucked in the back, and it's a little bit hard to get to with the deep well socket, so the short well comes in handy. A 16mm spark plug socket, a 5/8 or a 16, they're basically the same. You will need that to pop the plugs out. You might be able to get away with just using a 16mm socket if it'll fit in the cylinder head. Short extensions, I stack those guys together to pull the plug out for cylinder number 6. Again, it's a little bit tucked underneath that wiring harness. A little bit difficult to get to, but using those 2 extensions, you can get it just fine. The longer extension on the left is used for the rest of the plugs, but it's a little bit too long to use for cylinder number 6. Needle nose pliers. This might be useful to you if you're using just a 16mm socket, not an actual spark plug socket, because the spark plug socket should have a little rubber thing inside of it that'll help you pull the plug out. If you don't have one or you can't get the plug out, needle nose pliers comes in really good handy, as you can reach down into the head and grab it. Same thing with the coil pack. You can actually use a coil pack to pop the plugs out. I'll show you guys that later on. And a torque wrench. We will be torquing these spark plugs to 216 inch-pounds or 18 foot-pounds. I highly recommend torquing your plugs. A lot of people just like to snug them up really well with the socket. I prefer to torque them personally. Alright, so the first step is we're going to have to get this valve cover off. There are 2 holes that hide bolts, and mine don't have the caps, but if you do have the caps, just get a little flathead screwdriver, pop it under there, pry them out, and it'll reveal the bolts. And those guys are 10mm, so we're going to pop both of them out. From there, we got to take the oil filler cap off that sticks in the way, and then we basically just pop off this guy. Alright, so now we got to take out the coil packs. So from here, we're basically just going to pop this little clip up, and then we're just going to wiggle a little connector out of the bottom of it. We're going to do that on all 6 of them. Alright, there we go. From here, we basically just pop the ignition coil packs out. So those guys are 10mm. And do note that some of them, like this one, has a ground strap to it. If you disconnect it, make sure to reconnect it there. Take pictures. I know the OBD1 cars are different than the OBD2 cars in the way they ground their coils, basically. So just make sure to take note of which one's grounded where and to make sure to put it back correctly. The last one can kind of be tight to get to. So once all the bolts holding the coil packs are out, they basically just pop out. You give them a gentle little pull, and they come right out. So now we're going to take our 16mm spark plug socket, pop an extension on that, slap that on a wrench, and drop it down. Now these guys are kind of on there a little bit tight, so it might take some force to crack them. We're just going to thread it all the way out. And my spark plug tool doesn't have a little rubber thing inside it. If it did, the spark plug would have come out with it, but it didn't. So I'm going to take one of my coil packs and stick it down in there and fish the plug out with it. Very nice. And now we're going to take our new plug, drop it in. And I'm going to thread them all the way down by hand first, and we're going to torque them later. So we're just going to go until he stops. There we go, he's snug right there. And now we're basically just going to go down the line and get all of them. And to get that last one, I'm going to be using 2 short extensions stacked. That should get us pretty close to the valve cover. That's more than enough. Also, a set of needle nose pliers comes in handy for fishing out these old plugs. So we got them all nice and snug. If you pop a coil pack or a plug out and the boot of the coil pack is covered in oil or the spark plug is covered in oil, it means your valve cover gasket is leaking. This gasket that seats this part on, that means you have a leaky valve cover gasket and you need to get that fixed. So we got them nice and snug. Now we're going to get them tight. These spark plugs get torqued to 216 inch-pounds, which is 18 foot-pounds. So now we're just going to go down the line and torque them one by one. And our last one gets the 2 short combo. There we go. So once that's done, we're going to pop in our ignition coils. And from here we're basically just going to be threading the coil packs back in. And for my OBD2 guys, the 96 and up, you have a ground strap on the bottom of the first one and at the back of the second one, so make sure to get that guy on right. So I like to push down on the coil pack and then thread them in by hand. We'll tighten them up in a second. So these don't really need to be torqued, so I just get them nice and snug with my hand. But if you really want to torque them, 89 inch-pounds is a good number. We're just going to go down the line, snug them, get them all tight. From here we're going to pop this little connector up, slide the connection in, and then push down on it, and that'll secure it. And we're just going to go down the line. Alright, from here all that's left is to pop our cover back on. And make sure to get those nuts back on. Snug them up. Let's get them nice and snug. Got to put our oil cap back on. And that's it. We're done. Alright, that's it. Our plugs are replaced. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh, and I will see you guys later.